The moment you give yourself permission to fail, then you give yourself permission to succeed. You're not a failure. You just failed here, but you've never given yourself permission to fail. And that's why it makes it so challenging.
Get ready to build, protect, and sell your expertise online with the Online Genius Podcast. You'll laugh. We hope you won't cry. But you'll always be informed and prepared so you can have the success you want. Here's your host, Bobby Klink.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of the Online Genius Podcast. I am your host, Bobby Klink, and I'm really excited for today's show because we are going to be talking with a great guest who's going to give you some good advice about marketing and branding strategies, but is also going to talk about some really specific advice about cutting-edge technologies like chatbots and why you need to be thinking about these things because the era of email marketing may be coming to an end. Today's guest expert is Heather Ann Havenwood. Now, Heather was named one of the top 50 most must-follow women entrepreneurs by Huffington Post in 2017. She is an entrepreneur.com contributor. He is regarded as a top authority on digital marketing strategies and online business sales systems. But Heather isn't just someone who's a talking head because she's actually been building online businesses for a long time. She built her first online business in 1999. And in 2006, she developed and grew an online publishing company from zero to $1 million in sales in less than 12 months.
Yes. She
repeated that again in 2015 with a local weight loss and online supplement business that went from zero to $1.5 million in sales in less than 18 months. Heather is now an entrepreneur mentor, marketing coach, and sales system strategist. She currently focuses on working with solopreneurs, small businesses, and sales professionals on how they can leverage the hottest online techniques. She also has her own podcast called The Win with Heather Havenwood, which is a great resource and I certainly recommend to you. So, Heather, welcome to the Online Genius Podcast.
Thank you for having me. And by the way, it's always fun to listen to your own bio. And I'm like, did I write that or did someone else write that? Is that me?
Yeah, right. I always enjoy that too. People read my bio and people will say things and I'm like, wow, I really want to meet this guy.
Right, exactly. I'm like, is that me? That's not me. Yeah. Someone called me a media darling and I went, you're not talking about me. I don't think I'm media darling. They're like, you kidding me? But I think everyone's perception of who we are versus like our view is always different. So thank you for that. Thank you for the amazing introduction. I really appreciate it.
Well, Heather, I am excited that you're here and I'm excited to start talking about some substance. But before we do that, I want to ask you a couple of questions about you. And part of that is before the interview, you mentioned to me, I think that you're involved in improv and taking a stand-up comedy class. Is that right?
Yes, I live in Austin, Texas. And about 3 years ago, after my mom passed away, my coach said to me, why don't you do something really, really different, like something just really random? And I lived downtown. So there was a theater nearby and the improv class. It's only like 4 weeks. So I thought that works. And I started there 101 improv. And I actually ended up going 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106. And then finally, they had to kick me out. Like, Heather, there's no more. Like, you have to do something else. And they go, why don't you do comedy? And it's interesting because there's a known comedy school here. I can't get in. I've been trying to get in for almost 1.5 years, 2 years. And I'm on this wait list. I'm trying to get in the wait list. So I'm trying to get on because comedy, it scares the heck out of me because it's one of those things. I love going to comedy shows. I really have this affinity for comics because if you look at it, it's them and a mic staring at a bunch of people going, hey, make me laugh. I mean, think about how hard that is, so it's one of those things I don't think I could do. I don't think I'm funny at all. But so I'm kind of been wanting to do that for a long time to learn how to do that. But improv is the baseline of all comedy. So all comedians out there, including, like all the talk show hosts, Jimmy Kimmel, all those are been grounded in the mastery of improv. So that's what you and I were talking about in the green room about, how interesting improv is because it's kind of the groundwork, of many different actors and actresses and, Ellen and whatnot. So when you understand the principles of improv, you actually start to see it everywhere in many different aspects in media.
Well, so let me ask you this from, my listeners are largely going to be online entrepreneurs or people who are striving to be. And I'm guessing there are actually a lot of good tips that they could get and a lot they could learn from taking improv class. Is that right?
Absolutely. So the first thing is when I started doing improv, I had no idea I was going to get into podcasting. I wasn't into podcasting at all. And now as a host and as a guest, it really is the principles I use to be a great guest and be a great host. Because it's the same principles. It's also the same principles when you're working with people and how to move things forward, because improv is all about not conflicting and moving the story forward, right? So it's never about saying no to somebody, which is challenging for me. I'm a debater. It's always about saying yes. It's also a way, it's what I call a way to be into communication politics, which is interesting too. So it's a baseline of many things on a communication level, but in the world of podcasting and media, and if you're out there promoting yourself and telling your story and sharing your story, you've got to learn it. So I wrote a book called Power Guesting, and I talk about the principles, but really a lot of those principles I take it right in the book. I totally stole them from improv. And I say that, like I took these from improv. So but they're still time tested. If you're trying to get on media and try to exposure, if you're an author, you're a coach, you're any kind of person that's trying to get out there in any level of media, from podcasting to radio to actual TV, you've got to understand the principles of improv.
So listeners, there's your first pearl of wisdom.
Yeah.
You should go out and sign up for an improv class and start with it. But Heather, I've got to ask you a question because you said something during that. You said you're a debater. Does that mean you are actually in debate? You were in school?
So I wasn't. I wish I would have been. I love the art of debate. My ex-boyfriends would say that's true. It doesn't do well for relationships to constantly be debating. To me, they're like, you're fighting with me. I'm like, no, we're just having a conversation. We're just debating. You have a different view than so I probably should have been a lawyer on some level. I like the ability to see both sides. I love that. I don't know why that is. No, I was not encouraged. I was brought up by a Southern woman. There's a lot of things I wish she encouraged me to do, like play golf, because we had this awesome golf team in high school and I could have learned for free, and debate. But I was instead thrown into, drill team and cheerleading, right? So,
well, the reason I asked is I actually was in debate in high school.
Oh, you were? I wish I was.
Well, when you talked about improv, it brought back a memory for me because
improv is a lot of baseline on I think improv, if you understand improv, you can do debate well.
Exactly. And that was, so our debate coach one time, we had the debate coach or debate team, but then we had people who did kind of the drama at those competitions. And our coach at one point said, you know what, I'm throwing all you debaters in and you're going to do this improv. And it was actually a lot of fun. And I enjoyed it. So that's what
a really good improver can spin anything. So some people are like, oh, they're just spinning. A good improver can spin it and you don't know they're spinning it. A bad debater or a bad improver, you can tell when they're trying to spin a conversation or political whatever. You can see it. It's like if they get uncomfortable, you're like, oh, they're trying so hard to spin it, But a good debater, a good improver that has their principles of improv, they can spin the conversation, and you have no idea they're doing it. That's why all the talk show hosts at night, the late night, and Jimmy Kimmel and all of those guys, all of them have a huge grounding in improv because they're dealing with actors and actresses and politicians or whoever they're interviewing, and they may or may not ever agree with them, and they have to constantly control the conversation. It's not a true, like, let's talk about your life, like an Oprah. It's more about fun and entertainment and let's talk about your movie and how fun it is, So they're constantly having to use those tactics. And that's what podcasting is about. And I tell people in my book, podcasting is entertainment. I mean, in the day I want to give you tactics and your listeners, my job is to do that. But they're also here to be entertained. Right.
People only show up.
Improv comes in.
Yeah, people only learn if you entertain them along the way.
That's improv. Yeah, improv teaches you how to explain, talk, communicate, and entertain.
Well, with that, then I'm actually going to move because I have a great topic for us to talk about, which is I want you to tell the listeners about the first moment that you realized that you had made it as an entrepreneur.
Made it or failed? I think both. So honestly, it's a couple things. One, the first one is when I was actually had failed the most, and literally sitting on a couch with a friend named Bill. And he says to me, you got to get where I'm at. I'm in Florida, single, I have no support of like family. You know, I'm going through the bankruptcy process, personal bankruptcy process. My house is in the foreclosure process at the time, and I don't have any money in the bank account. Okay, so you have to get my world at the time. Okay, so I'm sitting there on the couch, and I'm of course playing victim and crying, and my life is over. And he said, "I want you to pick up this pen. Here's a piece of paper, and I want you to write everything I say on this piece of paper." I, Heather, give myself full permission and license to fail. And I'm sitting there writing it, and I'm barely writing. I'm like crying. Why are you making me do this? I already know I'm a failure. You know, I'm just like totally breakdown. And he's like, Heather, you've never given yourself permission to fail. The moment you give yourself permission to fail, then you give yourself permission to succeed. You're not a failure. You just failed here, but you've never given yourself permission to fail. And that's why it makes it so challenging. And I love the analogy. One, you can get the world of that, but the next level of that is athletes. I mean, we sit there and stare at the TV, or if you're at a game, of athletes failing and failing and failing and failing and failing, but they don't see themselves as failure. They get back in the game, get back on the mat, you know, keep throwing the ball, keep throwing the ball, keep throwing the ball, because they're not a failure. That was just a failed play. Let's keep going. They give themselves permission all the time to quote unquote fail. You know, so when you give yourself permission to fail, then you're actually giving yourself permission to succeed too.
So Heather, by the way, I'm going to steal a line you used in there, and I'm going to tweet it for sure. And that is, it's only when you give yourself permission to fail that you give yourself permission to succeed.
Yeah. Think about an athlete. I mean, think about a kid who's like 6 or 7 years old, and they're at the T-ball, right? They're in the T-ball, and they try to hit it, and they miss, right?
Yep.
And then they start crying, and they look at their mom and go, I'm failing. I can't do this. I'm done. But well, get back up there. You got to keep going. You know what I mean? You got to keep going, and all of a sudden you hit it. But it's not until that kid, 6 years old, you can understand a kid's mentality. And not until the kid gives himself permission to get up there and keep hitting it, and basically fail and keep hitting it and fail, hit the air, and then all of a sudden, bam, right? And so he's giving himself permission to fail, but that's how he gives himself permission to hit the ball and succeed. So as an entrepreneur, we get really focused on a project or whatever our thing is at the time, and they get really attached to it. You don't get attached to the thing. You should be allowing yourself to connect to the game, right?
Yeah.
That's the difference. If you're a football player, NFL football player, by the way, the Cowboys just won last night. So I'm super excited. So the Cowboys just won last night. Woo! But they're committed to the game and playing the game. And they're 6-on-6, so they've lost 6 games, but they're still committed to the game. They're still a player. They're still playing the game, So that's where people get off the hook, is like, well, I didn't win that game, so I'm done, or I failed. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think to put it in terms for entrepreneurship, look, you're going to fail. And I say fail. You're going to have things where you do a launch that doesn't succeed. And I think the
launches or products that people didn't like, or headlines that didn't work out, or.
Yeah. And I think one of the lessons for entrepreneurs is don't give up, and don't even give up on that product. I know, for example, that I've seen, I think it's Amy Porterfield. I've seen some suggestions from her about how, if she had given up on her first product launch or course launch because it failed, she never would have succeeded. So you have to keep going and keep pushing. And sometimes it's just you haven't found the right message quite yet for your brand, and you need to keep going.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And so since the baseline of media is improv, the baseline, like the grounding in entrepreneurship, is copywriting. I did an event back in 2013, successmagnetseminar.com. You can still see it. You can actually get the videos. And I did an event, and what I titled it was basically about the number one skill set all entrepreneurs must learn to ever succeed, and that is copywriting. And so I had John Benson, John Carlton, Joe Polish, and Joe Sugarman all there as speakers. I mean, you have the cream of the top, minus Dan Kennedy there for copywriting. And the event was in Vegas, and you could still buy the videos at Success Mag Seminar. But the whole point of that entire event was the grounding, the backbone, the baseline of all entrepreneurship is understanding copywriting.
Well, so Heather, I think, you must be a mind reader, because literally the next question I was going to ask you is if you could give online entrepreneurs one piece of advice, what would it be? So from this, I'm guessing it would be to learn copyright.
I work with clients. I work with entrepreneurs. Most of my clients already have a business. They come to me and they're at 500,000 or they're at 1 million or they're at 1.5 and they want to double that. Most of my clients already have business like that and I work with them on doubling it. What I'm constantly working with them on is sales. They come to me, I want more clients. Great. Let's look at your structures and see your sales flow. What's your sales structure? What's your sales model? And then I started looking at how it's all over the board. And you have to understand that copywriting, just like improv, is the baseline. And so you understand copywriting, which, by the way, what copywriting is understanding how humans buy, the psychology of why and how humans buy. That's all it is. And it's time tested. And we as human beings haven't changed that much. Okay. Copywriting, the principles have not changed. Why? Because we have not changed. Yes, we have iPads and iPhones and weird Teslas, but we haven't changed. That's why you can open up the Bible, read a story from the Bible, and actually get it. Why? Because we haven't changed. We just don't alter that much. Okay. So history repeats itself over and over again. So why people buy or move towards something or desire something hasn't altered at all. I don't care what anyone millennial tells you. Love you millennials, but we all haven't changed. Okay. You might be different, but you're just the same as all of us, of why you move towards something versus away from something and buy something. So the point is that copywriting, the study of copywriting, is the study of psychology of purchasing and buying and taking action.
Okay. Well, so you mentioned the link to the course or whatever the session you did, which will be in the show notes. Yeah. But I'm also someone, I like to read. So do you have any recommendations for good books on copywriting off the top of your head that you would recommend?
Yeah, absolutely. So Joe Sugarman was actually the foreword of my book, Sexy Boss. He's got an amazing book that actually was written many years ago. It's called the Adweek Copywriting Handbook. It literally has changed my life. That is literally the handbook. No kidding. The Adweek Copywriting Handbook by Joe Sugarman. It's not gone out of style. I know that you guys millennials, you see a book that was written in whatever, I think it was 2006 or something. You're like, oh, it's old. No, that one is amazing. There's also other ones like Breakthrough Advertising. That one was actually written, I think, in the 50s. These are time-tested books. This is what the gurus, or you would call it, or the true writers or copywriters, this is what they study, Yeah. So I'm just giving you some old classics, really.
Well, and that's great. And I'll be honest. I mean, a lot of the people I listen to in a lot of different spaces, Russell Brunson, for example, talks about how you should go back to the classics for copywriting and for direct sales, because he says the same thing as you. Nothing has really changed. We're the same fundamentally.
Yeah, no, I've known Russell for a long time. I was actually, I've known him since Big Seminar days, which was back in 2003 and 4. Him and I were on a stage together doing hypnotizing. It was kind of fun. So I love Russell. He's a great guy. Yeah, he's right. He was taught like I was taught. He was taught by the originals, and they taught us that. Like, look, guys, internet's changing, things are altering, things are moving fast. Yes, but how and why people buy hasn't changed. It will never change.
Well, that's great advice. And so again, listeners, I'm going to put the names of the books in the show notes so you'll be able to find them as well. Heather, you said something there that I think is a good way to transition into the next topic. You said that the internet is changing things. Uh-huh. And so one of the things I wanted you to talk about, because you are always someone who's out on the cutting edge, is chatbots. Because I understand you are a big proponent of chatbots. Yeah. And so why don't you start by telling, for people who don't even know what they are, what is a chatbot?
Okay, let's start from the beginning. First, I'm a huge early adopter. I don't know where I think that came from my father. He was the guy who, was doing betas and, he was just constantly early adopting. So I have this bug called early adopting. If something comes out and I'm not on it within 3 months, I'm like, oh my God, I missed it. So I don't know where that comes from. But so chatbots, I'm a big email person, a big email marketer. I always have been. I'm actually speaking at Affiliate Summit West in Vegas in January. So if you're there, please come see me. And I told someone this other day, I said, either there's going to be a huge crowd in my session or there's going to be nobody, because at Affiliate Summit, there's a ton of emailers and my title is Email's Dad, right? So They're either going to be like, we're not going to go watch her, or they're going to be all there going, what's this chick about? So I'm going to be talking about chatbots. So what happened in January of 2017 is that Facebook decided to open up their API. I'm going technical here, but they decided, hey, we have something here with Messenger. People are starting to communicate on such a big level. We want more of that. We want businesses to be in Messenger all the time. How do we do that? Well, we don't know how to do that. So let's just open up our API. And they basically selected a few companies. There's now like 50 or so. They're all in San Francisco. They all know who they are, each other's are. Like they all, like they're friends. And then all these companies kind of just like popped up overnight. One of them is called MiniChat. There's other ones. All they are is basically they got approval from Facebook to be connected to their API, and then now charge monthly. And then they're focused on the interface, and they're focused on just like an email, like MailChimp or Aweber, right? They're basically now trying to figure that out. What are the ways we can use this? How can businesses use this? And so what's happening is e-commerce specifically, they're starting to get away with, remember you go to e-commerce sites like live chat, all that's going to go away fast. And your live chat for specifically mainly e-commerce B2C, business to consumer, will go right to chatbot and be connected to their Facebook page. Like that's already happening. That was the first thing to go, right? The second thing now is with authors and speakers and service providers is that instead again of calling, it's going to go right to their chatbot, basically their Facebook page again via Messenger, and someone could be talking to them real time, But how I use it is lead capture. So instead of saying going to my website, sexybossinc.com, and give me your name and email, which you can. Instead, I'm going to say to you, go to this following website, askheatherann.com, askheatherann.com. And what you're going to do is you're going to literally open up Messenger. Even if you're on a phone or if you're on a desktop, it's going to open up Messenger. And my chatbot is going to start talking to you and asking you questions and having you choose answers, kind of have you go down a process. Are you man? Are you female? Where are you from? Where are you from? Do you have a business? I mean, this is all data. So I'm getting all this data from you. Okay. Now I know who my customer is. Are you man, woman? That's the things I ask. You can ask whatever you want. You can ask how old they are, whatever. You can have them options. You can start to get data from people versus just giving your name and email. So once you go through that process, my chatbot process, I do give you a free gift. But here's the cool part is that now you're on my broadcast permission list, aka chatbot list, aka broadcast list, just like an email. So now I can quote unquote broadcast you via Facebook Messenger, and I can send you a video, I can send you links, I can send you whatever. They'll be short. It'll be short. It won't be big long email, but be really short, 140, 200 characters. And my open rate with Messenger is like 90%. The average is between 85 and 95%. Someone messages you on Facebook, most people are going to open it. I know a lot of people because nowadays Facebook has two apps. Like I look at my Facebook Messenger app all the time. I don't look at my quote unquote Facebook as much, right? I look at the Messenger because Messengers to me, it's personal. It's like my text. So, and as the demographic of millennials and even younger, all they do is text. When you tell them go call it a business, they're like, why would I do that? Text, right? They want to text them. They want to communicate via text first. They'll make all their decisions that way. So that's the future of chatbots. And that's how I use it. When I'm on shows media, I tell people go to askheatherann.com and interact with my chatbot, experience it, like live it, experience it, breathe it, and then start to ask yourself the question, how can our business use it?
Okay, well, so let me ask you some questions there to help people understand. So on that initial chatbot, I mean, how long does it take you to kind of set up and figure out? I assume you have to figure out, well, what are the questions I want to ask? And is it kind of smart where if they say I'm a man, it asks them one question, and if I'm a woman, it asks different questions? Or is it just a series of questions that everybody sees?
It's called relationship connection. So it depends on the company. For me, the reason I ask that is I have some fun with it. I say, hey, I call men sexy boss studs and I call women sexy boss. What are you? And that's just mainly out of just having some fun, okay. And also I want to see the demographic of who's coming. And so now I can see They just say, I'm a man, woman. I go, okay, great. Hi, sexy boss stud. How are you? And that's it. Right.
Okay.
So it allows you to ask really whatever you want. You don't have to ask anything. You can say, hey, what's up? Give us your name and email and we'll give you some stuff. That's fine. But people now want to have a relationship with the business, because going back to what I said earlier, this is an H to H world, H to H, Heather Havenwood, but H to H, human to human. People do business with other humans. Basically, they want to connect. And so the best way to do that is to make your business as human as possible. And since people aren't calling as much anymore, it's like chatbots are another way.
And here's a question I have, because I'm betting that some people will be skeptics. So kind of like you mentioned at the affiliate event you're going to be at, where you will have a lot of people who won't want to go to your thing because you're saying email is dead. Can you integrate it where as part of your chatbot, you're getting emails, or is it a standalone system?
It's very different. It's a very standalone system. It's not integrated, and you don't want to integrate it because, give you an example. If I had a bunch of phone numbers, text messaging, right? You know how it is when you get a text message that's long. What the hell is this, right? You don't want that. Same thing with chatbots, or same thing with Messenger. You don't ever want a long message. Email, you can have a long email. You can use a lot of, so it's the same concept. So it's very separate. They're completely separated. It's just separated. You have to really think through the process. But the thing to understand about this, it's not about the technology. It's about the RET, and it's about the relationship technology. It's understanding that human beings buy because they understand and they want to connect with a business or company because it's human to human. Human beings haven't changed that much again. Yep. So this is about understanding that. So let's take it back to something we all understand. Tom Hanks, that movie, how he was on the island for a while. I forgot the name.
I know what you're talking about, but I can't think of it.
Castaway.
Yeah, there you go.
So he builds this relationship. Remember Wilson? He builds a relationship with a volleyball. Remember?
Yep.
Okay. So it's that concept, right? So we want to connect, right? But sometimes it's with an animated object. There's businesses out there that create brands with animated objects or dogs or whatever, where we start to connect the brand with a thing, a cartoon could be, right? All kinds of things. So that's the whole point, is that you're starting to build a connection with a human being with something that's interactive versus here's a webpage and give me your stuff.
Well, let me ask you this, though, because I think then a lot of people who are used to email marketing as the primary way of kind of doing this marketing are going to wonder, how in the world can you get a message and a marketing message out in 140 or 200
You don't.
characters?
You send them a link. You send them to something.
Okay. So you basically send them to something, a link to try to get them to a sales page or a video page or something like that, where that's where you do the selling?
Correct.
So what are the big obstacles for people in adopting or setting up a chatbot technology?
Well, it's not that intuitive at this point, and it's still being integrated, and it's kind of an open source at this point. So MiniChat is $20 a month, and it does integrate, but it's limited. So what's happening now, it's kind of like when websites were back in the day. You got to have someone who understands how to set it up. Like if you look at mine's very interactive. I have a little video of me talking. It's actually my cartoon. There's a lot of questions, stuff like that. So I work with the company that we set those up for people. The pricing starts around $2,000 for a full setup. I mean, you can go in there yourself and set something up really basic, but an integration where you can really have a conversation and build that relationship, which is the key. You're looking at right now $2,000 until it becomes intuitive. I'm sure in 2 or 3 years, it's going to become a lot like email, where it's drag and drop and all that. But right now, it's not that way because it's an early adopting stage. We're talking only 10 months that Facebook's even opened the API. And what I see happening is that Facebook is going to eventually go, okay, now we get it. Now we know what we want. We're going to buy you out, and we're going to handle it. That's probably what's going to happen. I'm just totally guessing on that. I'm pretty sure. Or they're going to go, oh, we're going to own you and we're going to kill everybody else and you're going to be our company.
But so we haven't yet gotten to the point that there are kind of the companies with the drag and drop and built-in technologies. Okay.
Not yet. They're coming. But because it's not mainstream, they're right now working with companies that are willing to put some money into this to say, hey, we really want to figure this out. So
Okay, so you've mentioned mini chat, but I guess my question is, you also mentioned
so many more. You can just type in Google like chatbot companies, and they'll just like pop up.
Well, and do you have you mentioned the company that set it up for you that charges more.
Yeah. Go through me. You go through me.
Go through you. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So how would people just go to Heather Havenwood, or where would they go?
So go to heatherhavenwood.com, and the upper right-hand corner says work with Heather.
Yep.
And it goes to my calendar, get a phone call with me. So the reason I work with them is because they're the techies, right? Which is great. But I want to work with the client to say, let's work this through. Let's talk this out. Who's your client? What are the information you want to ask? What's the gift? Let's walk through this process on the marketing level. And that's why I work with them, because they do the techie. And then I give them, this is what we're going to do with this client. This is what it's going to look like. And here's the pathway. So that's why we do that.
Great. Well, now I want to transition from cutting edge technology to old and boring and staid technology. It's not even technology, but marketing. And that's books, because you have published a number of books. And so I guess, why don't you talk about, what role has that played in helping you to build your online platform?
So I teach authors specifically. I work with authors specifically. And their biggest pain is they come to me and go, hey, I took all this time to write a book. Maybe it was a year, sometimes 2 years or something crazy. It's their life work. And then they got it published. Maybe they had an opportunity to get it published with a big company, or maybe they paid $25,000. There's a lot of companies out there like $25,000 and you get it, all this publishing. And they pay all this money and they're expecting that the publishing company is going to be the publishing company and quote unquote market it. That is not the case at all anymore. So nowadays the author has to be the marketer. So I work with them after they go, oh my gosh, I spent all this money, and it's just kind of like, what do I do with this thing? And what I work with them is exposure, visibility, and monetization, and not focusing on selling the book.
So the point is, you're not trying to make money from the book.
Never. You can't make money from a book. Right. You don't make money. I don't make money from a book.
Well, hey, come on, Heather. That's not fair. I think I get like, $15 royalty payments each month from Amazon or so. Is
that money? I mean, I don't.
No. I just
like a cookie. You know what I mean? So I think that's what I'm saying is people look at, the book is the end all. And I say, no, it's not. You have to understand exposure and visibility, monetization, and leveraging the work you've already done, AKA a book, using the things like table of contents. If you have 12 chapters, you now have 12 podcasts. So you can literally recreate and repurpose and put it out there. That's one. I mean, you can go on and on and on. I have so many different things I work with people on. And that's what I do is I work with them for 3 months, right? It's a 3-month process. They usually come to me and they've already launched, but I also work with people that are like in the launch. I try to do it at the same time. I'm a big proponent of books or ongoing leverageability tools, not just the first 30 days. So my book, Sexy Boss, I wrote in 2013. I still leverage it constantly. So what happens is a lot of authors like, oh, that's, that was 2 years ago. I got another launch. No. If you actually are doing exposure and visibility and monetization correctly, it's an ongoing leverage.
Okay. Well, but let me ask you this, though. So you're talking about people who have already written a book. Is writing a book a worthwhile venture for an entrepreneur who hasn't done it yet, in your mind?
Oh, it depends. I'd have to talk to them and look at their business model.
Okay.
Some people know. Some people I have a client right now. Yesterday, I told her, if she's listening, she knows who she is. I was like, well, because she's shopping the book for a big time publisher like New York.
Okay.
Right. And they're coming back and they're doing all these rewrites. And I said, just stop it. They're not going to do anything for you. Having that Wiley or whoever you have or Ingram doesn't mean anything anymore. I don't have that. So it doesn't mean anything anymore. And literally, unless you are Hillary Clinton or someone really big, it doesn't mean anything anymore. So it used to mean a lot when we had Barnes and Noble stores around the country, because they're the ones that got people inside the stores. But now that we're such a digital world, that now you create a space and Amazon Kindle and then Audible and all these platforms that you can do everything plug and play, there's really no need for a publisher. They don't have the distribution at the level they used to.
I have to admit, the only time I go into a bookstore now is when I'm taking my 4-year-old daughter in because, I can't really show her books on Amazon, but that's about it.
Right. Exactly. So, I love bookstores. I love libraries. I kind of grew up just like, walking the aisles. I really miss that. But at the end of the day, it's now about scrolling. It's not about walking the aisles.
Yeah.
So you've got to really look at where's your money being placed. So I always tell people, if your business model is set up properly for exposure, visibility, and leverage, then yes, it's worth it. Because a book is a great business card. Even Dan Kinney talks about this. Dan Kinney, I'm a mentor of his, obviously, or a student of his. He's my mentor. I'm a student. He always talks about, my books never made me any money. He talks about, I haven't made it. And he's with Entrepreneur. Like, the guy's got Entrepreneur Press, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't make any money from it, but he still does them. He has a book almost about every year to every year and a half-ish for a while. And the reason is because he knows that the more he does that, and because he knows how to do exposure, visibility, and monetization, is that he's going to get more customers in the back end. So as long as you're clear on that, then you're okay with that. But it's challenging because the names out there, I'm using Hillary Clinton right now only because she's really, really loud in that particular spot right now. This is not a political show. I'm not going down that road. But she had this is a very different deal. She got a very, very, very large frontage amount of money for that.
Yep.
Right. But guys, she doesn't have a monetization in the back end because she's Hillary Clinton. She's got a Clinton Foundation. Just kidding. But she doesn't have to have that. So it doesn't matter.
Right.
But
right.
For entrepreneurs, you can't do that, guys. You got to think differently.
Yeah. And one piece, I'll throw my 2 cents in here. A lot of places you'll see, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs get sucked into this notion. They read about, hey, we'll make you a best-selling author. And they think, that means I'm going to make money. But that means you're going to be a bestseller in one sub niche of Amazon. Right. And I did that with my books, but they were about intellectual property law. And, I think I had like 15 or 20 sales in the first week, and that makes you a bestseller. So I can say I was an Amazon bestseller, but I didn't make money from it. That's for sure.
In fact, yeah, exactly. Now, in fact, for me, when I wrote my book 2013, I didn't do that big, huge launch crazy thing. I posted it, of course, right?
Right.
But I didn't do that. What I looked at is the long term. In fact, it was almost 2 years later when I was on a show similar to this with another podcast host. She said to me, hey, I want to say congratulations on being number one Amazon. And I said to her, thank you, but I'm not. I'm not, and that's okay. I'm okay with that. It doesn't bother me because I know that doesn't hold much weight. And she goes, yes, you are. And she sends me the link. This is 3 years after I wrote it.
Yep.
And so the fact that I was number one a bestseller that day, I don't know how long it lasted, and I wasn't trying, it wasn't this big like push. It's more weight for me. Like if for personal reasons made me feel better because it was naturally actually number one, not this big, massive, crazy push, so for me, it felt better as a person. I was like, wow, I'm so proud of myself. Right. But because my intention when I wrote the book actually was one thing. If one person bought it and one person made a difference, then it was a success. That was that was it.
Right.
And actually on my Amazon, Ryan Dice has a quote on there. He reviewed the book. And I remember when that happened, I didn't ask him to do that. I know him. He's local, known him for years. I didn't ask him to do that. I was like, wow, that was nice. But again, it's about how you can use it for exposure, visibility, and monetization.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's great advice. Basically, don't go into writing a book until you figured out what value it's going to have for you on the back end, basically, is kind of the pearl of wisdom.
What are you doing with it? Right. So Sexy Boss became a brand for me that I didn't know it would be. I really didn't. Now people literally, I was at an event last week and they're like, oh, are you Chief Sexy Boss? I've heard of you. Right. And I'm like, oh yeah, I guess, so it becomes a brand versus just a book.
Right.
And now that I would call that a success when your book becomes your brand. Chicken Soup for the Soul.
Right. Exactly.
Brand, not a book, a licensed company. I talked to a client yesterday. I was like, yeah, Chicken Soup for the Soul. Those guys are still making royalties on it. It's a licensing company. It's not a book company. And they do nothing. She's like, really? I was like, oh yeah, honey, please. Like Chicken Soup for the Soul was just nothing but a license. They Chicken Soup for the Soul license like coffee cups, for God's sake. Pens, like it's a licensing company. So it's not a book company. When you get to that level, that is called a success of books, right? When you actually use it, Seek for the Soul, another one. Men are from Mars, women from Venus. Another one, time tested. Yeah. So that's what I call a success story in the book business.
Okay. And I think that's great advice and a great thing to think about. Now, Heather, I could keep talking to you. We could talk about other subjects like podcasting and podcast guesting, but I don't think we have time. So I'm going to wrap it up, but I do want to ask you kind of one question. And that's, look, I'm a planner and I like to think of kind of what can I do in small chunks every day, or what can I get done by the end of the week? So with that idea in mind, what I'd like you to do is, can you give listeners a tip or a trick that they could do, again, in 5 minutes a day, or that they could get done by the end of this week to improve their business?
It's a really bad question to ask me. I just don't think like that. So here's what I'll give you, though. So here's the philosophy behind it, is that when we are in chaos, it's the worst place to make a decision from. When we're clear, we can make a decision. But how do you get to clarity? So when we're clear, we can have movement. When we have movement, we can have power. When we have power, we have momentum. So how do you get to clarity? That you ask yourself a question. Does this feed my confusion or strengthen my clarity? Does this feed my confusion or strengthen my clarity? So it's not about the tip. It's more about, what are you doing? Is it adding confusion or is it adding clarity? Is that thing you're doing adding confusion or clarity? If it's adding confusion, stop it. If it's adding clarity, keep going.
Heather, I think you said it was a bad question for you, but I think it was a perfect question for you, because your answer is perfect. It's every day, just ask yourself, hey, is what I'm doing adding confusion or adding clarity? And, if it's confusing things, get rid of it or change it. But so just ask yourself that question every day, I think, and that will help you to advance over time. And look, it's not going to be tomorrow that you're going to be perfectly clear, but if you do that every day, I think we can all agree that in a week or two or three.
For me, I do it based on the item. So doing this show, right? Is it feed my confusion or strengthen my clarity? Well, my job is to add clarity to your listeners and to everyone listening, including yourself, and adding value to you and value to your world. So therefore there's clarity. So therefore it adds clarity to me. So therefore I'm good. So I do that before I do everything. I canceled a mastermind, really amazing mastermind I was involved in 2 weeks ago. Why? Because my coach was like, okay, is it going to add confusion for you or clarity? I'm like, confusion. It is. I mean, they're amazing people. I love them and I really miss going. But sometimes sitting around a room talking about ideas after idea after idea after idea adds confusion to your brain. So you know what? Sometimes you just don't do that.
It's a good piece of advice, and it's almost like the advice that if it's not a hell yes, it's a no. It's the same concept I'm getting from you, that be thinking about what you're doing and making sure that it's kind of pointing you in the right direction and not confusing things. So I think that's great advice. So thank you. I want to thank you, and I'll let you go, but I wanted you to tell the listeners where they can get in touch with you. If they just want to follow you and get more information generally, what should they do?
Great. So here's the following. So my chatbot is askheatherann.com. Give you a free 3 chapters of my audiobook at the end of the chatbot. My book's on Amazon. Just go to heatherhavenwood.com/Amazon. It's all there. And if you just want to have a conversation with me, maybe about chatbots, maybe about how I can help you in your business and grow, maybe if you're an author and I can help you grow there, you can go to the following, go to heatherhavenwood.com. In the upper right-hand corner, it says work with Heather. Just click on that, get on my calendar. It'll be me. It won't be assistant. It'll just be me. We'll have a conversation and see if that's a good fit for you.
That is great. And listeners, I would suggest you do all of that, including go through the chatbot. I'm actually going to do that once I get off this interview, because I'm interested to see it. And I think it'll be interesting for everyone to do it. So again, Heather, thanks for being on the show. It has been great. I've learned a lot. I'm sure the listeners have as well.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Bobby.
So listeners, stick around for the quick legal lesson after the break. I'll give you just a quick lesson, but that's it. And we're signing off with Heather at this point. Thanks.
And now for today's legal lesson.
Yay! Hey, everybody. Heather's great, isn't she? I really love that interview. It was a lot of fun doing that discussion with her. One of the things she talked about was chatbots and the value of chatbots and why you should be using them, etc. In the process of doing that, she mentioned that you need, in the process of using a chatbot, when you get through and go through the process, part of the advantage of doing that, as she said it out, is that once someone goes through that process, they have agreed to receive broadcast messages from you. Now, what she was talking about there is that someone who completes that process through the Facebook Messenger chatbot has given you permission to then send them messages on Facebook. So that's what she was talking about. And that's where I want to pick up in discussing the legal lesson for today. The legal lesson for today is all about getting permission from people before you start sending them marketing messages. Now, before we talk about the law here, let's make very clear, permission-based marketing is important from a business perspective, because if you start sending messages to people who haven't agreed to receive them, chances are it's not going to be very effective. You're going to turn those people off. They're going to say, who in the heck are you and why are you sending me this information? But the power of the other, of kind of once someone has opted in and said, yes, I give you permission to send me messages, hopefully you have a better rapport with them and so it'll be more effective. Let's be clear, that doesn't mean that 100% of people are going to open it, listen to you, etc. And some people may still say, who is this guy and why is he sending me messages? I'm sure that happens because people, in my case, have downloaded freebies that I've given them and then don't even realize it then when they get an email message from me later that it's the same person. But let's back up. From a legal perspective, you need to make sure you get permission before you start sending marketing messages to people. And that's the case whether you're doing it via email or via social media. And here's why. Let's start with email. Now, in the United States, actually, you don't have to have express permission from people. In the United States, commercial emails are governed by the CAN-SPAM Act. And the CAN-SPAM Act, although it does a lot of great things, one of the things it does is it doesn't say you have to have an opt-in. It simply says once someone opts out, you have to give them a way to say, I don't want to receive anymore. And once they do that, you have to stop. But in the US, for US recipients, you do not legally have to get an opt-in. Again, it's a good business practice, but it's not legally required. But in Canada and in Europe, the law actually requires you to get an opt-in. And so if you're an online entrepreneur, chances are that some of the people you're reaching out to are in Canada and or Europe, not just the United States. And so again, you would be running afoul of those legal requirements if you reach out to them without getting an affirmative opt-in. So just from that perspective, you need to get an opt-in. You need to get permission for email. So again, if you look at any of these email service providers, they're going to ask you, they want opt-in, they're going to do those things. They're not going to want you just to upload people's names. You can do it, obviously, but you shouldn't. Now, the second piece here is not about email. It's about social media. And this is what Heather was talking about when she talked about you getting permission to broadcast to them. And the reason why you have to do that is because in the terms of service of the social media platforms, they generally require that you have permission from people before you start sending the messages. If you don't listen to that, if you start messaging people without permission, you're violating the terms of service. And what's going to happen if you violate the terms of service? Well, if you do it repeatedly, those social media platforms are going to shut your accounts down. That's always going to be their solution. If you are doing something wrong, they're going to shut your account down. And that's not a good thing. You obviously, once you're building your platform with your social media, you want to continue to use it, have a consistent brand like Lauren Weissman talked about in episode 2. It's having this consistency over time is important. And so that means you need to keep using the same social media over time. If you violate the terms of service by just starting to spam people, it causes a problem. Now, Twitter, ironically, used to have an issue because I think their terms of service didn't kind of said you're not supposed to do that, but everybody did. Everybody had these automated DMs they sent out to everyone who followed them. They've cracked down on that. So a lot of the services that you can use, the tools you can use will no longer allow you to send DMs. Quite honestly, as a Twitter user, I love it that that's happened because now I can actually get through my DMs. In the old days, I just couldn't because I was getting so many DMs from people just because I followed them and you just couldn't even keep up. And so now, it's become a much better experience. So Twitter, I think, will start cracking down on some of the few remaining companies that are out there that allow you to do automated DMs and stop it. Facebook, it was always harder. But again, you need to get permission. So that's the point here. From a legal perspective, make sure you get permission, or otherwise you run the risk of losing your access to the platform. And that would be a devastating blow to your business. That's it for the legal lesson today. Short and sweet. Next week, we've got another great episode for you. But again, my call to action today, I've got two of them. If you have not yet subscribed and given the podcast a rating and review, I would again ask you to do it. That will help get the show into the hands of other entrepreneurs. It will just make it so that it appears more frequently in searches, et cetera. So I would ask you to do that to help other online entrepreneurs out there. Doesn't help me, doesn't give me a dime. It just helps other people get this information. Second, I would add or suggest to you that you should download my free cheat sheet that walks you through the 4 biggest mistakes that online entrepreneurs make and helps to explain what you need to do instead, how to avoid those mistakes. And you can get that by going to mistakes.youronlinegenius.com. So that's it for today. I'm Bobby Klink. I'll see you next week with another episode, but until then, I'm signing off.
Thanks for listening. And remember to visit mistakes.youronlinegenius.com to get your essential guide to the 4 legal mistakes that can doom your business and how to avoid them. Join us next week for another episode to expand your online genius and your success.